I think Sarah needs to press the recording button. Yep, that's all done. Brilliant. Over to you, Robert. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Richard. Let me just sort this out. So you should be seeing, hopefully, just a quick check, Richard. You can see the first slide. Hope so. Otherwise, this is going to be a very short presentation. That's good. Brilliant. It's not. Me and Richard spoke of a couple of months ago, I suppose. Now, I'm trying to think of not what to do, but how to present it. So this is going to be a high level, but it's more. It's not going to be on exact functionality. You know, this button does this and that button does that kind of thing. This is more of a where we were to where we are and things you may need or may help you in the transition, really. And again, we may have to revisit this, but for now, that's where I've positioned it, and we'll see how we go. As Richard says, I'm from Bentley Systems. I'm a product specialist for the Rail Group. And I think I was last a PWI member in about 1978. That's when I first started. I probably lapsed about 1988, I think. But anyway, it was a long time ago. So let's just start this. So where are we now? Probably, I might just actually, apologies, just stand up on my desk for this one. Makes it easier to hit the next button. So where are we on now? You're probably on either SELECTseries 2 or SELECTseries 10, or either Power Rail Track or Bentley Rail Track. So Power Rail Track just being the standalone version, comes with one install, whereas Bentley Rail Track, you have to load MicroStation and then Bentley Rail Track on top of it, but same functionality. So SS2 came along many years ago, and that was kind of the beginning of this. In those days, we're going way back, we had 3 civil products, Geopack, Inroads, and MX, 3 different groups. And it was kind of the beginning of that, trying to get this uniform working across all groups. So we had this geometry and this data acquisition on this side, which worked across all 3 platforms exactly the same. So it led to we could move things around between platforms. And then we started to introduce OpenX, let's call it OpenX rather than OpenRail or OpenRoads, but it was a technology, not a product at this point. It was just a way of doing things. And the idea was we'd have this, again, this common, let's call it not a data environment, but this common set of tools across, in those days, there were 3 different product lines, which were in 3 different development groups and in 2 different countries at the time. So combining was a bit of a challenge. So SS4 came along, and that merged into maybe you on SS10. And the only difference was there was licensing, but the rest of the functionality stayed exactly the same. And this is where we started to see these new menus appear, these civil elements, these geometry tools. You can still use the ALG, you can still use the ITL files and DTMs and all that thing, and your regression and your cant and your turnout tools were all exactly as, but there were these geometry tools appeared under these task menus. And it started off as just horizontal, then it turned into vertical as well. And I think in SS4/10, cross sections have been removed, and you had to use the new way to do cross sections, for instance, in roadway, as it was then, roadway design, I think, I can't remember what it was called exactly, but I think that was it. But anyway, it all stayed the same, apart from these menus, which are the new idea of working things. And now where we are, this is not quite, this is pretty much up to date, I suppose, but we now have this rail suite of products, and what we're talking about today is OpenRail Designer. We got Concept Station and we got Station Design, other stuff, but it sits on top, or it sits all together on this connected data environment. And really that's where we are now, and that's where everything's progressing forwards. All new, everything new is done inside OpenRail, and all of you, whether it's road or rail, OpenX, so we don't have MX or Geopack products anymore. We just have an open something. So BRT as it stands now, or Power Rail Track, and these are a few things I highlighted. I just wanted to talk about the changes that you probably encounter, plus a few extras on top of this when we get further down. But these are really part of the admin, almost like the settings side of things. So obviously we had project options. So in file options, you would have rail options in there, kind of exactly where it was. It moved around a bit. There are things like, gauge, virtual transition lengths, those kind of stuff in project options. The XIN file, of course, so that's kind of one of the key things we're running Power Rail Track or Bentley Rail Track is the XIN file, because it contains all your style, symbology, preferences, and the way you want to display. Simple as that. The ALG files, again, your alignment. So this project set of, you have a project, Stratford, and inside it is the up main, down main, whatever, and underneath there would be the geometry of the horizontal, vertical, and canned. DTM, digital train models, of course, that's ground models. Template libraries, if you're just doing renewals, you might not be using those. But if you're working on new construction, then templates. And we've got IRD files, reports, and may not be just custom menus. You can have these TBR files. So those things are kind of the key, without even the functionality. Forgetting about how to place a line or put a turnout on something. This stuff in the background is crucial. And some of you may have heard, you may have actually be on or members of. We've got a UK Rail SIG, just a bit of publicity here, which is open to anybody. Just send me an email. I've got a presentation after this on rules and design intent in geometry in the new world. But so we're looking on this Rail SIG to make basically a workspace, a UK workspace, which will be fit, hopefully. It won't suit everybody, but it should be a good starter for 10 for most people. So one of the key differences in OpenRail Designer, apart from it's a brand new product, it is not a rebranding. We haven't gone from over the past, we'd have gone way back in rail. We started in rail, late 80s. And that turned into a rail track, which turned into Power Rail or Bentley Rail Track. And there was a gradual change, but underlying technology is exactly the same. OpenRail Designer or anything OpenX is brand new. Underlying technology is completely different. So we have new ways of doing things. And one of the key things here in bold here is everything is driven by the workspace. At the moment, you probably, when you kick off BRT, you'll get the MicroStation Manager window, and it probably says it's user, project, interface, can't remember exactly what they are, and the little boxes down the bottom now. A lot of people just leave them as they own. They're just a default, and it doesn't touch it. I mean, sometimes you can do, but that's been, and that basically configured where you're going to drive to look for things. It's mainly a MicroStation thing, but now in civils, everything is driven by workspaces in the Connect world. So these workspaces are crucial, which is why, with the help of PWI members, we're trying to create this UK default workspace. I've had a version 2 out, version 3, and probably version 4 will be out soon on a pre-beta mode, but it's to cover everything which we did before. So how you display, not how to design, but it's really just how you annotate, display things, how things are configured. So in these workspaces, we have different places, obviously. So design options, for instance, we now have in settings as design file settings and user preferences. We have a lot of config variables. Don't even want to talk about those too much, but they just drive where it looks for things. Still got levels, but we've introduced element templates. And I'm going to go a bit deeper into all of these a bit later, but element templates have always been around in MicroStation world, but we never use them in civils, in any of the civil products. We do now. And feature definition symbology, again, they will be new to you. But if you think about name, symbology manager and style manager, that's kind of where we are with those things. Annotation groups are completely new. And again, I tend to think of those almost like a preference name. We'll talk more about that. Label definitions, they've been introduced the last couple of versions, so they are new as well. Drawing production has changed. You may have, in the past, you would go, I don't know, evaluation, profile, create profile. Pick your geometry, click on the screen, pick a preference probably, click on the screen, and it's drawn your profile. And maybe then you go evaluation, profile, annotate profile. And again, you'd probably pick a preference, and I want to annotate, I don't know, the chainage canned, horizontal, vertical, and whatever, something else, can't remember anything. But you pick from that list and it applies it, and that's just drawn in MicroStation. And then you've got to create the drawings from that. Now, we did have a thing called, oh, I forgot what it's called. There was a, that's good for about the other day. I haven't used it for a long time. A drawing boundary creation tool. I forgot what it was called now. But basically that, you could take a piece of geometry and you could say, right, the length is going to be whatever. And I'm going to have sort of sheets along there. And it would try and do a job of trying to make drawings automatically, which didn't really work most of the time. But now when we have a new drawing production tool, we use name boundaries, which again are MicroStation kind of technology. So for plan, profile, cross-section, we use these. And again, all this can be set up, and I'll show you a bit later on about that, again, within the workspace. So all this really is just workspace stuff. So if we get the workspace 80–90% done, we're never going to solve every problem, but one we deliver hopefully will be good and people can customize it. But you haven't got to worry too much. You can just pick an A0 plus 5, whatever, A0 plus 2, A1 plus 3, hit it, and it'll find the settings and it'll just create stuff. And then it's up to you how you move things around. So that's very new. Template libraries are the same. If you've ever used any of the corridor modeling, the roadway designer, they would stay the same. Reports have stayed the same, but you would need to upgrade those reports, and there's a utility to do that because you may have, I think the header information has changed in the reports. If you've got any custom ones, you can upgrade them. If they're just our delivered ones, then don't even worry about it. We've replaced them anyway. And custom menus, we can customize everything. And again, we're looking at that within the workspace. So quite a lot to look at. And again, interface is a big change. We now have this ribbon interface. And you have these tasks on this little picture. There's one called OpenRail Modeling. There'll be one called Modeling. There'll be one called Drafting. You can make your own if you want. I actually made one complete new task menu, which is this customizable, but it's driven by there. And you can do quick keys and stuff like that. You can organize them. But the ribbon interface is common throughout all the products now. So we don't have the Explore window anymore. That has gone. Yep. If you didn't know, that's going to be sad news for you today. So that doesn't exist. Another one of interest, which I always have this open whenever I'm running anything, a thing called feature definition toggle bar. And it's just you open it up and you can dock it anywhere. But bottom line is it gives me a few snaps and I can set what feature definition. So basically a feature definition, which we'll come on to it, is really how it displays. It may be existing track, remove track, whatever, and what the symbology is, what color. Is it going to annotate or not? Stuff like that. So everything has a feature definition now. It's just an easy way of getting to it. So I tend to have that. And the locks, there's a very few now. We do not have right lock. We do not have pen and pencil lock, for instance. Remember, we used to do that, which you probably still do. Graphic group and all the rest of them still exist in MicroStation world. But these locks, pretty much the only one is the auto annotate is useful. So if that is on when you place something, it's got an annotation group attached to it. And again, think of an annotation group like a preference. So maybe if I'm placing a piece of geometry, I could put in an annotation group which says actually just put in, I don't know, dumbbells at the cardinal points, or dumbbells and direction arrows, or give me just hash marks every 50 meters for change markers. If that is attached to it and auto annotates on, that's what it will do. And the other one is useful is persist snaps. So again, we're going to talk about snaps a little bit later, but everything has a design intent. So if I take a line and snap onto something, just using MicroStation, and that button is on, it will remember that. If it's not, then it just doesn't remember. It's quite simple. It's on off. But this button is something I'm going to put it up there because it's something I use all the time, and I think it should always be just docked. So a few differences, as I said. So we had file options, project options in BRT or PRT. That doesn't exist, but we do have design file settings. So in design file settings, these could be set in a seed file. I'm actually looking at changing some of these in the current beta release, but it doesn't matter too much. It'll be pretty much similar. But we have, so in here we have civil formatting, and all the rest of the stuff is MicroStation. So active, angle, scale, it's just MicroStation. But the civil formatting is unique to the civils thing. So in here, you know, the cant round in, the centerline rail gauge, centerline inside edge, whatever the virtual transition length, that stuff can be set, and that can be set in a seed file. So when we go file new and use that seed file, those settings will be carried forward or used. The other one is preferences. Now these are not set in the seed file because these are user definable. Now you could set them up as a starter for 10 in the seed file, and if no one changes them, all well and good, but a user can change this. We have in here, I don't know, for instance, there's a microstation settings and there's a view option civil, which is the one you'd be interested in. So things like, you know, we can show on regression slew data, you know, show me anything over a certain color, bright red, you know, and we can set that unacceptable value, make it 0.1, say 100 mil, anything over 100 mil, make it bright red. So it's just a visual check. And, you know, in the turnout profile and the settings, you want to see turnouts in profile, yes. Do you want to be able to position it relative to the vertical, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's where they've gone from project options. So that doesn't exist as in the new world. As I said, levels, element templates, obviously levels exist. That's the backbone of everything for us in deliverables, in putting stuff on the right level. But we now link to element templates. So the levels is, I said, it's a base level, but we have this thing called element templates, and they're used in our symbology later on. So in the element template, it's a very simple example. It's used in the network rail jump centerline P. So on that centerline, the track is just going to use that. And we could add in there things like cells, objects, other things. But very simply, it's the element template is how it's going to display, whether it's an override or not. That first level, we always start at the very base, which is a level. The element template uses that level. And then we get onto these things called feature definitions and symbology. And think of this a bit like the named symbology and the style manager. So the feature definition kind of is like the style manager, and the feature symbology is like the name symbology in Power Rail Track. So the symbology, again, you would do that. And there is a wizard for doing this stuff. If you need to make that do it manually, but you can pick from the symbology, you know, is it what annotation group is going to be assigned? So is it going to annotate automatically or not? And do you want the straights different symbology to the curves, to the spirals, for instance, or is it going to be one color or whatever? Is it going to be a ditch? Is it going to be anything? And again, plan, profile, cross section can be completely separate or different. And they all load back then get loaded by the feature definition. And the feature definition is the thing you pick when you place something. So when I place a new line, new piece of geometry, it'll ask me, I don't have to, but I don't have to set a feature definition, but it's a good idea too. Ultimately, you'd need to, but you would just pick the feature definition. And it says, I don't know, in this case, you know, rail CL track 1. And just by picking that name, it knows everything else that flows underneath it. So it goes to the symbology, to the element template, to the level, and it's going to be hopefully all in the right place at the right time. So they need to be set up in the workspace, and all this is in the workspace. And some of those can be carried forward. So for my XIN file, I can actually I can do an export and bring in into my element templates and into my feature definition symbology. I have to do a bit of moving things around and organization, but they can be brought in. Preferences, so if I went to, for instance, I don't know, geometry, view geometry stationing, and there's a preference for view stationing, that cannot be imported or brought into the new world. So evaluation profile, annotate profile, that kind of thing. Those preferences cannot be brought into the new world. We have to make them from scratch. So in the workspace we're developing, and I'm developing, I've got a whole bunch, I've got like 20 examples of profile annotation. There's a whole bunch on plan, cant and things like that, turnout. So that hopefully will give you a starter for 10. But the way it works is we have this thing called a text favorite, again at the bottom level, and these text favorites they would be not used before, and they are can either be static text, or maybe ch equals, and computed text. It may be ch equals and a station. So the ch it just puts out there, but the station it gets from the geometry. Or in this example, there's r equals and planet, so it's a radius, and L equals the arc length, and V is the speed, and E is the applied cant, and D is deficiency and stuff. So you have static and computed. Can be just static if it wants, can be just computed. But the text favorite gets used by the annotation definitions. So the annotation definitions are the building blocks. So these are, maybe I want hash marks every 100 meters. I want to label that every 100 meters with a station. I want to label maybe the radius value and the spiral length. And all those would be definitions. And they all basically link to the annotation group. And the annotation group, again, controls all of this. So when you place something or you annotate something, you pick the annotation group name. So that's why I'm thinking, if you think of the annotation group just like a preference name, you're halfway there. Because then when I go to, I don't annotate cant, maybe I've got cant along center line, and I just pick that one. Cant along center line is going to put stuff out there for me and automatically just do it. So annotation groups have to be created, and as I say, all part of the workspace. Label definitions, I've just added this in because I wasn't really looking at these until basically this week or end of last week, thinking we could use, these are new, it's a thing called Civil Labeler in OpenRail Designer now. We had text labels and remember drafted notes going back a long way. Well, drafted notes doesn't exist anymore. And a labeler still exists in MicroStation, but this civil labeler takes the civil information. Again, we can either use computed values, give me an intersection of two alignments and tell me what the names are and the changes at the intersection say, or again, static. So I've got some examples here like standard text, existing geometry, existing CWR, a hazard 1 or hazard 2 red zone or whatever. So those would just be boxes with text in. So again, I'm thinking about using those, but they would need to be created from new. They don't exist in anywhere else. Talked about drawing production. Where it's the plan and profile generator was the name I was trying to remember. Which sometimes it worked. When I was working on Channel Tunnel, we were using that. We tried to use it a long time ago to try and get, consent sheets all the way along the geometry. But this thing is now doing that and a lot better. And we have plan, profile, cross-section, or just like a 2-point, or pick a zone or whatever. But bottom line is, where it says drawing seeds here, again, these are delivered in the workspace. So if we do the workspace correctly, all I need to do is come in here and pick one from the list. So in this case, A0 +2, plan 200 scale. As soon as I pick it, it will fill in all the dialog box below with all the dimensions which it needs. Because it already knows the zones, I've already set those up. And the only thing I need to do is pick the name or select the name. And I can either pick the geometry name and you'll fill it in or just overwrite that. And when I click next, it'll automatically know what border is being used. I've already set it up. And it will just create the sheet model and the drawing model automatically, either in the file or in separate drawings. So again, plan, profile, cross-section, all done in here. So this is the drawing production side of things. Template libraries, as I said, haven't changed. Now, the only thing you would have to do is, in the old way, we use a style in PowerRail Track. You go into the templates and there's, double track, ballast, whatever. All those points would have a style assigned to it, but we don't have styles anymore. We now have feature definitions. So they would need to be edited and the correct feature definition applied. One-off thing, once it's done, but it would need to be done. There's no way of bringing them forward and attaching, not that I know of, the feature definition to it. Reports, to say, stayed the same, but any custom reports, there is a facility on communities. You can download a zip file with a bunch of utilities in which can import or upload, or not upload's the wrong word, but upgrade, I suppose would be a better term, the reports, because the information is the same. It's usually just the header information. The paths have changed for the XML header schema. So, but don't do it manually, because I tried that and it can be very painful and very difficult to get right. So use the update facility, which is on communities. Thought about custom menus, so we can make your own, and this is one I'm looking at, put it into the workspace. I've got a rail design workflow, which is, so rather than me driving around from geometry to a rail tab to a drafting tab and stuff, I'm trying to combine everything into one menu. And again, delivered with the workspace. This is probably very similar to one. This may or may not be the final one we will deliver, but we will get some feedback on that and add or remove stuff. But we'll see what happens. It's completely new, but it's something you can do to make life easier. And again, if you've ever used the custom menus in the custom task menus inside Bentley Railtrack, they cannot be imported in. We have to recreate, which is why I've got this custom menu here. Dialogs. A lot of people say, "Oh, the dialogs, it's too many pieces in the dialog box now." Well, the way it works in OpenX is a dialog box pretty much has all the functions inside it. We just have bits turned on and off. So, for instance, if I said, I don't know, curve, this one, arc between points. Arc between points has many things, and maybe you don't want all of them. So what you can do, you can actually customize the dialog boxes to suit. And some of these are already done. We have arc between points, then arc between with just arc, for instance, and an arc with spirals. Well, all that is the arc between is just as spirals just turned off. So you can do that yourself if you want to. Again, that would live inside the workspace. Haven't done any of these yet, but that's something we may or may think about in the future. So that's all workspace stuff. As I said, we are developing with conjunction with PWI members, the workspace. I've been looking at it for a little while now, and hopefully by next week we may have another version to send out, between in a couple of weeks. We're not sure on that, but that's all pre-release at the moment. It's all beta. So I posted the last one on the UK SIG webpage, which is, say, if you're not sure, send me an email and I can add you to the list. But that will be available soon. Again, do not use on a project, blah, blah, blah. It's work in progress, before we get the official release. So we are changing stuff, but it's worth having a look at, and get feedback is even better. And it could save you some time. So the next question is, okay, that's all workspace, but get a bit more into geometry world and how we work at the moment. My work at the moment is you go open up a DGN and it's a 3D model. You never use a 2D model. Well, that's going to change, because everything we do is pretty much inside a 2D model, or starts, I should say, with a 2D seed file. So 2D or not 2D, that's a sad pun, but I quite like it. So for 3D, for instance, the only thing I need a 3D seed file for is survey and terrain. So a digital terrain model must be created inside a 3D model, and or anything that's got CAD. So MicroStation, Civil 3D, AutoCAD, whatever, any CAD I would always have inside a 3D model. Anything else which we create in OpenX, you would start with a 2D seed. So geometry, corridors, starts with a 2D seed file. Sounds a bit strange, but that's the way it works. So we have two seed files now. In the past, we just have one. We have a 2D one and a 3D one. And as I said in the past, said earlier, those seed files could contain things like gauges, and stuff like that, changes to rail distances. But you have a seed file, and that's where you start. The 3D are created automatically. So when I start in a 2D model, I start placing some horizontal geometry. So OpenRail then manages the creation of a 3D model. As soon as I make something active which has a 3D part to it, like a terrain model, for instance. So if I create a new DGM which is 2D, and I've got my 3D terrain model already created, I can reference in that 3D terrain model into my 2D model. It's smart enough to know. As soon as I make that perimeter active, it will create the 3D model automatically. And it's in there, done. If I want to import a survey, like a MicroStation, I would import it or attach it like a reference file, say. I would attach references to the 3D. Anything else is in 2D. What you do not do is delete either default or default 3D. If you delete default 3D, your world will crumble. That's a very bad thing. The machine needs these to work. So you don't rename them. You let the machine handle basically the function of that. So it says here, the 3D model, do not delete it, do not rename it. You can show them. I can show 2D and 3D exactly in the same file. So I've got 8 different models to look at. And the weird thing, or slightly weird at the very beginning, is the 3D is automatically referenced back into the 2D, which makes life interesting. But you can just turn it off. Turn off the view. Do not detach, just turn off the view. So that's a subtle, well, not a subtle change. That is a big change from what we did before. So now we create everything, as I say, I'm talking about geometry here. I forget about terrain models. We create everything in the 2D model. As soon as I activate a profile, I create a profile and I activate that vertical geometry, some lines and curves and stuff, the 3D model is created. So it says here, think of it as an interface to the 3D model. Now I can still select stuff in the 3D model, bizarrely, not bizarrely, but I can pick points off there if I'm doing a corridor, for instance. So a new design, I've got a bridge and I want to find out the elevation or pick a point across there. I can actually use that. But the 2D is the view, and you obviously get a 2D plan view, and then we have a profile view, which we'd look at our profile along section. And again, that is not a MicroStation fix anymore. It's just now a new model type. So this is a fairly big change from what you're used to. So the profile model and the dynamic sections, these are not the deliverable profiles and cross sections. These are I call them, I think, like a design section. So this profile model, which you can put into any view, is your design section. And that is where you place your curves, your spirals, you look at the lifts and lowers and whatever. You bring in other information, you can annotate that information, put in points, I don't know, bridge deck, whatever. But that is your design. So as you move things, if I got a vertical and I update the vertical curve, for instance, then the 3D model automatically updates. So it's linking back. And these are, as I said, non-index models. These are unique models. It creates it on the fly, but this is not the deliverable. This is not the printed section. This is the design. And you'll notice in the future, be more and more information be coming into these. So key points to take away. We use 2D and 3D. And I said, think of 2D as an interface to edit the geometry and corridors. And let OpenRail, OpenX manage the 3D model. It seems a bit weird at the beginning because you're so used to doing stuff in 3D. But after a while, it actually becomes really easy and it's much easier to try and control. So the strange bit is the 3D model is referenced back to the 2D, which is good. But if you've got a corridor, you probably want to turn off that display, not detach it, just turn off the view. It just makes life a bit clearer. So do not delete the 3D model. And it says set in the profile active will display its 3D representation. Again, we have this horizontal, vertical parent-child thing. So you can have multiple children, verticals in this case, and one horizontal, which is the parent, and one will be active, a bit like we've got now. So that is the one where the model you'll show, and you'll see that in the 3D view, so you can flip between. So when referencing, as it says, attach the 2D model for 2D, and let OpenRail manage the 3D part. But anything not created by OpenX, you'd attach them to the 3D model. Geometry, how long we got? We're doing pretty well. So again, these are not too deep, but it's things you hopefully you'll remember. Project Explorer, which is new, is one of your best friends. Open it up, dock it on the side. It doesn't have to be open, you can just leave it collapsed, but leave it on the side because that helps you understand. It lists or shows you all the standards. It shows you all the libraries, and again, the workspace loads all these different DGN libraries, which have different settings and different feature definitions inside them. But as you place something from that library, it makes it active in the file, makes it live. So these, where it says my feature definition inside is Orbit twin track design, these are all live in the file. So I could turn them all off, turn them on. And it's all the symbology, the annotation, all that stuff. But it's handy to keep an eye on. When in fact you'll need it, you just leave it. And I said you access the standards as well from here. The Explore and the properties kind of work together. The Explore window has a properties dialog box. And again, properties I don't use all the time, but I tend to have it there, but I don't pin it open because that can slow things down, I've found. So I just leave it squashed over to the side. But from there, the properties are like a deeper dive into the object you pick in the Explorer. So in this case, I've got a complex element, and it tells me its level, its varies, and it's all information on the side, the geometry stuff you don't even care about, to be honest. Extended information, but it does do that deep dive. So they work in tandem, and they are worth having. I certainly have the Explorer open all the time or docked. Properties when I need it. And again, you can modify, think about the properties, you can modify the information in there. So I don't know if you've got a curve between two straights, and so you put them in there, you floated a curve between two, and maybe you forgot to add on the spirals. Now the machine knows that actually there's a zero length spiral already attached to those curves. So I can go to these properties and just put in a spiral length at either end if I want to, and it will just reform. So it can be useful. Useful for validation and also useful for checking and modifying. Civil geometry. So again, we talked about geometry as in a 2D file, but it's also changed. We now have a thing called design intent, which we have these things called rules, which means it has an intelligent updating, which is basically what we call design intent. It's more than just CAD. In the past, you have BRT or Parallel floating above CAD version, and you draw a line or you display the ALG, for instance, in there. It'll display it, and it's just a one-off. I modify, I don't know, I go and change the curve or something, and depending on what locks you've got turned on, right lock or pen and pencil and stuff, it would either update or not. But you could delete all the graphics, because the ALG, as long as you saved the ALG, of course, you are happy. Now everything is in the DGN. Everything is managed by the DGN. So this design intent is clever, but it's all inside the DGN now. So we use references a lot more. So we can have just a CAD line. I can draw a MicroStation line. Great, that's fine. But I can also make that line what we call civilized. So I can add a feature definition to it, which would be a type of rule. And I can make it a civil object, which then have maybe a length and a bearing, So it's gone from just being a CAD to what we call a civil object. So that's a subtle difference, or not subtle, that's quite a big difference. So this design intent as well carries through the product. So as a simple example, I've got my main line. Maybe I've offset something, a piece of geometry, 3 meters off to the left. Simple as that. It's just an offset, partial offset. So a zone is 200 meters long, 3 meters off to the left. That has a rule that says that line has to stay 3 meters off from the left. If I move my main line, that will move with it. It has to. Now I can remove that rule or disable it, but if you leave the rule on, you've told it, I actually want to be 3 meters, if it's doing what you tell it to. So it has this intelligent updates. And again, that works across references. It doesn't have to be in the same file. So an example, I've got my terrain model. Maybe I've created on a different file, I've opened up a new file, and I've got my geometry. In that geometry, I can reference in, so a 2D seed, I reference in my 3D terrain model. I can then do a profile on my horizontal. I can display, I'll see under display my ground. I can snap to the ground for my vertical piece of geometry. So then if I move my horizontal, my vertical would move across, but stay snapped to the ground. So obviously things may change, elevation, stuff like that. Taking that a bit further, I could then open or create a corridor, 2D DGN, reference in my ground, my geometry now. I could run a corridor along it, run a template, maybe single track or something. If I go back and modify my geometry, I can do that. When I go back into the corridor file, the corridor will update because it's linked to a rule that says I'm attached to this main line. So it has this design intent and it's intelligent updating. Now we can turn the updating off. So if you do lots of edits, it doesn't update automatically, but it's got that linkage. Differences as well, just quickly skipping through some of these. A lot of it is heads up. We call this heads up display. So you get on-screen prompts, you get dynamic feedback. So if I draw a line, piece of civil geometry, I will get, if I click on it, I will see its bearing and distance, for instance. And there'll be an orange by the default color, and I can just type in them and change it, and the geometry will just update. We have these manipulators again, so I can move, rotate it around, drag it forward, drag it back, kind of stuff. And they're all part of or linked to these rules. So as I said, they're the enforcer. So design intent, elements placed with a function in mind. They can be removed, and they act in one direction. So you have a parent and we have a child. It's never the child is affecting the parent. It's always opposite way around. As I said, the main line and this offset parallel. The main line is a parent, the offset is a child. The main line moves, the child is going to move with it. Many, many rules, too many to go through today because we does not have time, but all these are types of rules. Whether it's a feature definition or just a microstation snap, intersection snap is a rule. Station offset, trimming. So we use all the microstation commands now, so we can use trim to intersection. All those things we can modify with microstation. So we've got more power, snaps. So these are not our right locks on and right lock off, pen and pencil. These are just microstation snaps. Again, it honors those. And how rules added? Pretty much anytime you do anything within the geometry tools or moving something and just basically snapping onto something, that would give you a rule is added. Now, I mean, whether you like it or not, that's what happens. That's what it does. So any of these, creating a line, an arc, points, civil draw. If you never use civil draw, look at it. It could become your second best friend, especially on vertical. It can be very, very useful. The trim commands, again, these are microstation. These are CAD trim commands, trim to intersection, modify element, that kind of stuff. So civil draw, not to be used with normal or general draw. You can't use them both at the same time. One is on, one is off. But you toggle on civil draw, and it's context sensitive. So if you're on a plan view, you get different options to the profile view. Maybe it's delta Z rather than delta station offset or something like that. So it changes to suit, but it can be really useful. What doesn't add rules? Basic CAD, if I just draw a line in microstation, smart line, there's no rules added. If I break that smart line or modify it, nothing happens. So modifying on normal graphics will not add any rules. You have to use the civil elements. And one of the biggest changes again is, well, we don't have the ALG, as I said. We have terrain models which live in the design file, but the geometry and the corridors are all referenced or can be referenced. Can everything in one file if you wish to, but not a good way, but referencing. So the rules and all this design intent works across reference files. So on this simple example, we've got a survey. We create the terrain model. So that terrain is a 3D DGN. I reference it into my geometry, and maybe in 3 different geometries, of course. And I could use nesting and things like that, of course. And in that's when I got a corridor and maybe, well, let's call it canned rather than super elevation. Get rid of that. That's a crazy road name. And then that all goes into the master. There's a deliverable file which has 3 different geometries, zones 1, 2, 3. And I see everything. And of course, if geometry 1 changes, it all flows through and the master will get the update. Basically, the coordination DGN at the very end of it, which has nothing live. It's just all referenced. And all that things can be sent out using iTwins and things like that, iModels. So quick one on how do we go. So we start in the DGN, 2D or 3D. Design file settings, and yes, well, that will be done from the seed file, hopefully. User preferences, again, pretty much on the C file, but you can change it. And then all that kind of other stuff, well, that top lane is really just done on the workspace. And then it's attaching a terrain, survey, whatever, and then start. If you've got a terrain, you haven't got a terrain, you just jump straight to designing with civil geometry and you're in the middle of wherever you are. Got coordinate system on, you can turn mapping and see where you are. So just a quick look at horizontal geometry tools. They have changed a bit. Conscious of time here, so pretty much very similar. Again, it's not for today, but we have fixed float 3, we've got IP, we've got what is now geometry connector, used to be multi-element regression analysis tool. We have canned, obviously turnouts are in there. More the heads up display, and you get all these little orange things are these basically the rules. It's I click on an element, it's going to tell me the radius. You want to change it, I can change it. We have things like table editor and things as well, still in there. But pretty much the tools are there. Vertical, very similar. But there's more vertical tools now, or ways of doing what we call profiles. I mean, the vertical tools, line, curve, haven't really changed. But the way to do profiles, a profile from element profile, project profile from, and stuff like that. It says many more in their options. Let me say, vertical parameters is circular is a parabolic. The element edits, profile by slope from element, by vertical. So when you're doing these profile by an element, of course, it's taking the parent and you're making a child of it. So if the parent moves, the child will go with it, or whatever parameter is set. So again, this design intent, everything is linked to that design model. Annotation, I said this is where your preferences come in. Whether it's plan, profile, haven't really looked too much at cross-section, got to be honest, in the workspace, but I've certainly done a lot in plan and profile. And whether it's, the radius, the length, speed, and underneath the frames. So all these, what we call it, these annotation definitions. When you pick the pull down, it will say, pick an annotation definition. Think about like a preference. I want the chainage, and I want the, I don't know, the cant, and I want the horizontal design, and I want the vertical, and I want maybe low rail level or something. And it's going to put in these boxes. And again, I've made a lot of examples for you to try and play with. Reports, I say, haven't changed. Custom. Corridor modeling, you may, or obviously if you're doing regression and analysis and renewals, you're probably not going to do any of that, but it is there because we've got the 3D model. It leads us straight into corridor modeling. So things like machine control, use design rules, we can design, what if, and things like that, and create visualizations. So the corridors, again, work across reference files. That is crucial to understand. Everything is through references, and the rules are applied across references. As I said, geometry changes, the corridor will update. Now, you can remove that rule if you want to, but there's reasons to why not to do that, and you may want to do it, but usually you want it to be connected. And at the end of all of it, we can dump out our collaboration more, let's call it that, to design review for iTwins. So again, we can go through iTwins for project review. Obviously, that's very crucial to life. We're not islands of information. We're within a band of different ideas. We've got the drainage guy, we've got the electrical people, everything is involved, and we can't do the civils people. We just can't do stuff on our own. So iTwins, we can just export straight out. And visualization, I said, we get that, and I'm just going to leave this running at the end. So that's the end of that. So this is just a quick viz thing where if you've never seen it, so this is a site in the yard. The train is a North American one, I've got to be honest. It's not a UK train, but could be any train. Might even be Canadian, I think. But this is Lumen RT. If you've never seen it, it's a very easy way to create a 3D model with some fairly realistic, for me anyway, fairly realistic, people a lot more professional than I am doing this, design and things like public consultation or just project collaboration. If we want to see what ifs and we want to see actually what's it going to look like if we do all this stuff, this is ideal. So we can easily just float in some trees and stuff. And I'm just going to drive this forward a bit because we don't want to spend all day looking at this thing. So we can walk along, and I'm just going to fast forward this because we can take static images and, we can basically set drive through, and then we can just set it as create a movie and attach the camera to the distance and object from the train in this case, and off it goes. And that was not difficult to do. That did not take anything. It's not very, I could do a lot better, I suppose, a bit more time with it, but that was very quick, rough and ready, and it didn't take long to put all that stuff in there. So that's the end of the upgrade, or things you need to know, I guess. So any questions for Richard? You're there, you can come back on.
Not any questions.
So I may have lost you there.
There you go. Sorry, microphone on top of my head. Yes, we've got a couple of points in there. Somebody asking for the link to the presentation.
Yeah, I think Sarah said, I'll create a PDF from the PowerPoint, and obviously recorded this, so that will be sent. I can send that to, is it Sarah? I think it's Sarah, yes.
Yes, yeah. Or to myself, either or, and we'll get it all uploaded to the site. Tom's mentioned something about plan and profile
Yeah,
generator.
thanks, Tom. I forgot the name. He's just reminded me of the name, and I couldn't remember what the tool was
sorry,
called.
Tim. Yeah.
Sorry, Tim. Sorry,
and
Tim.
then Vlad's just saying 3D also needed for rail strings, bridge checks, etc. So yeah, that's kind of touching on what you were talking about at the end with the multi-disc side of things.
Oh yeah. So we need that whole, say we're not islands anymore. Nice to be, but we're not. So it is that. No, if it's 500 meters of plain line renewal, that's probably, it's going to be 2D and drawing stuff like that. But bigger things like HS2 world, then things change completely.
Yeah.
Task navigation not loading in version 10.8. Thanks, Jakir. I'm not sure about that one. Got to be honest.
We'll get that looked at.
10.8. That's a long way to go, Jakir. Yeah. Anyway.
Maybe raise a ticket for that one. So Dave Woods, what's the best way for designers to get training in the package?
Good one, David. Again, I'm thinking of that. In the old days, we used to do like 3 days in a row, but that was in person. I think those days have gone. I think the better way is to do a bite-sized thing, 2-hour modules. But get back to me on that one. I could put you in touch with our training people. Depends on how you want to organize this, really. But we can talk on that one. Yes. But send me an email and I'll put you in touch with the right person.
I think there'll be a lot of people asking that question as well. Certainly a few people that sat in our office on the presentation. So and Greg, dynamic regression analysis, has that gone?
Nice one, Greg. I knew the MX question would come up eventually. There's still some MX people out there.
Yeah.
Haven't gone yet. We're having a look at changing stuff at the moment. We've had some meetings recently. More to follow on that. You may be, we're looking at a more dynamic way of doing things. So yes, that has been taken on board and we're still looking at that one. It's not there in the current version, but it's certainly, we're thinking of that one, yes. So hopefully we can get something, we don't do something better. That's what we want to do. We don't want to do the same, we want to do better than we had before.
Okay, and James Ransom, are you developing the software to have multiple vertical designs in one model?
We still have multiple verticals, James, as you know. Displaying is a bit tricky. Again, we're looking at multi-profile display, but we can still have multiple verticals. Only one is active like we used to have, but yeah, it's still there.
Okie doke. Chris Mannion's just asking that structuring can be set up but no longer forms part of the license. Some consultancies have had this. So Bentley will have a model they can use. Okay. Shab's just asking there, would it be better to have a PDF?
Yeah, I think we're looking at that, Shab, there. This is something we're looking at how to get from the old way, which was this 3-day in person to an online dynamic, which is not just boring and everyone just falls asleep, bottom line. So we're looking at how to I say bite size, let's call it that. That's what I'm looking to do.
Right, okay. I mean, the old training manuals are pretty good, weren't they, for people to work through?
Yeah, they were just, it was a lot to take in after 3 days. You forgot what you did on day one, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this is from the 30. Apologies about that name wrong.
Yeah, I know.
Will the migration utilities tool be updated to work in 2023 release 1?
Don't know is the answer, Nefertiti. Ping me or send me an email. I'm not sure. It's quite simple. Oh, look at that. Lazio, is it? Bizarrely, we're looking at that. That is a future. That is soon future, not 10-year future. That is actually really, it's difficult. It impacts a lot of things, but it's high on the radar right now. So yes, that will be. Don't hold your breath, but say hold your breath. Maybe Father Christmas might be good to you this year, that kind of thing. But I can't give a date, but certainly it's top of the list.
Okay.
Easy model in the Trav adverts can, yes. Tremaine, again, that's high on our radar. It's something we've been looking at.
Okay.
And certainly not on the last one.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not that one. Okay.
But you can contact Peter and Richard if you want to contact Charlotte, if you want to just contact Richard, yeah, and he
Yeah.
can go. If you go through you, Richard, that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But yeah, I'm open to people contacting. That was just, I wasn't trying to be block you off. Just
No, that's fine. Obviously, yeah, we can deal with that. Any chance for presentation follow up with worked examples? Because we've I mean, there was a huge turnout today, 132 people, I think it peaked at.
Really?
So
crikey.
Really good turnout. So
we'll talk. I think Dave and Richard, we can talk later. Yeah,
maybe get something lined up for the end of this year, or maybe start of next year when Father Christmas has been.
Got to mention that, Adam. Sorry, yeah, you can import the ALG and the DTM old, let's call it, SS2, SS4 into the new world. The turnouts would not come through though. Just to remind you, or be aware.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I've got to go. Sorry, Richard. Any other questions? But by all means, capture them. We're more than interested in taking questions, and we're really, really happy with basically working with PWI again. So it's a good thing for us. I hope it's a good thing for PWI. And if we miss something or got any ideas, what you'd like to see, send them in. Well, I'm going to say send them in. Maybe that's not a good idea, but send them in.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a rush and it was a bit of an overview, but there may be things you think, because maybe we could do if the workspace works out, we could do that again, the final one, review of what you're going to get. But we could do loads of things. Okay, thanks all. Appreciate the time and
Rob,
attendance.
I know you've got to dash off, so we'll let you go. Thanks everyone attending. As I say, the next meeting will be